Hi everyone, it's Hannah from Hand Done Crochet, and today we are making these Franny Granny sweaters together. They come in children's sizes from 0 to 6 months all the way up to age 9 to 10, and there will be an adult version coming, and if it has launched I will put the link in the description below. As for the pattern for these ones, you can also find the link in the description to tell you where to go and find it, either on my blog or as an ad-free PDF in my stores. To make the sweaters, I chose to use Hayfield Bonus DK yarn. It comes in a beautiful variety of colours and is great for children's wearables. We get 306 yards or 280 metres in 100 grams, and all the details of how much you'll need for each different size is in the description below. We're also going to need a 4.5mm or G+ crochet hook, or the hook that matches the gauge for the pattern. This is one of my Sirdar hooks here. We're then going to need a pair of scissors, a needle for your ends, and I don't know where I've put them yet, but 2 stitch markers to do the sweater. Now, just before we get going, I wanted to talk you through the general construction of the sweater because it is slightly different. It's not necessarily like anything you've made before, but it is not complicated, I promise. We begin with a yoke that looks like this. We're going to increase to a point at the front and the back here. It's a very odd shape, but I promise it works. And we increase as we go round to shape the shoulders. Then once we get to the point that we need to for the size that you're making, we are going to fold this over and make partitions and put stitch markers in so that we only work the body for a certain portion of this bit going down, and then we add the sleeves here. So you'll see on this 6 to 12 month one that I've already made, this is what happens. We have done this to a point down to here with the blue line. It's quite helpful to have different colours there. And then what we've done is added the body section on here and then popped the sleeves in. So it's in the same way as a normal top-down raglan is shaped, but rather than being a circle yoke or a square yoke, it's a triangular kind of yoke. So hopefully that helps to explain how we're going to go about making this. Then once we've done that, the body and the sleeves, we put the cuffs on and we can put the neckband on too. There are also different versions of this pattern. There's a cardigan version and there's also a hoodie version, and you'll find different videos for those available on my channel too. You'll see in the pattern that the different sizes are grouped together for the different yoke instructions because they are vastly different depending on which size you are making, but the principles are exactly the same. So we're going to be making the 0 to 6 month size here, and to begin that we are going to chain 56. So pop a slip knot on the hook and then chain 56. Now, regardless of which size you're making, the principles that I'm going to show you here are exactly the same. So we begin in the same way, but just with a different number of stitches for each size. And then each of our increase rounds, whether we're doing a standard increase round or an increase round that I'll show you in a moment with shoulder increases, they are the same for each of the sizes, just in a slightly different order. Now that we have our 56 chains here, we are going to slip stitch into this first one to join it into a ring. Now the trick is just to make sure that you don't twist here. So pop your hook into this first one, and then we are going to slip stitch here, and then once you have, just run your fingers around just to make sure that it isn't twisted, because then that will make your neckband twisted if it is. Now to begin round 1, we are going to pop a stacked double crochet. I'm speaking in US crochet terms here, a stacked double crochet in this first chain. You can use a chain 3 if you would like to, but it will look much neater if you work these stacked stitches I'm going to show you now. So our stack stitch is going to be working basically a single crochet in this first chain here. And then into the side of that single crochet that we've just made, we work another single crochet. So we pop our hook into the side of that single crochet, yarn over and pull through, and then yarn over and pull through 2, and that gives us 2 single crochets sitting on top of each other. That is then the height of a double crochet, because the rest of our round is going to be using double crochet. So for the next 2 stitches, that's what we need to do. We pop a double crochet in this next one, and then in the next one along. So that will give us 3 double crochet, because as you'll see further down, we're going for this granny stitch look, so we need to start creating sets of 3 double crochet here. Then we chain 1, we skip the next chain, and then we double crochet into the next 3 chains along. Then we chain 1, we skip the next one, and we do exactly the same again. So double crochet into the next 3. And then we chain 1 and we skip 1. And now all we need to do is carry on repeating this. So 3 double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, all the way around this foundation chain that we have. So go ahead and repeat that for as many stitches as you have, and then meet me back here when you've finished, and we will join the end of round 1. Right, so here we are at the end of the round. I have chained 1, I'm going to skip this last one, and now I'm going to slip stitch in the first one to join. And the important thing to remember with this sweater is that we are going to work in turned rounds. So we're now going to turn our work, and then before we do the next round, I would recommend that you count your sets of stitches just to make sure you've got the right amount. And in the pattern, I've called them granny clusters. So a set of 3 double crochet together form a granny cluster. So we should have, for this size, 14 of those clusters around our neckline. So just go around and make sure you've got the right amount. To begin round 2, we are going to start by working into this chain 1 space that we have here. So we're going to slip stitch into there, and then we are going to begin by working a stacked double crochet stitch. So that's just as we did with the last round. We're going to work a single crochet, and then into the side of that we work another single crochet, and that brings us up to a double crochet height. And then we're going to work another 2 double crochet into there. And in this chain 1 space, we are going to increase and create one of the points of our yoke. So once we've created that granny cluster there, we're then going to chain 2, and then into that same chain 1 space, we're going to work another 3 double crochet and make another granny cluster. So this space here becomes what I would use as the back of your sweater, but it doesn't matter, you can use the front or the back here. And that is our first point of our yoke. Once you've made that point, we are ready to chain 1, and then we're going to skip the next 3 stitches, so the next granny cluster, and then into the chain 1 space here, we're going to work 3 double crochet stitches. So that's our next granny cluster made. We're then going to chain 1, we're going to skip these 3 of the granny cluster, and then we're going to work another one into the next chain 1 space. And then we're going to chain 1. And for this size, we need to do 6 of these until we then do our next V. So I'll carry on and do those. So here we have our 6 granny clusters. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And now what we need to do in this next chain 1 space, we're going to work another point, another increase. So we're going to do 3 double crochet, one of our granny clusters, then chain 2, and then another 3 double crochet in here as well. And now hopefully we should have 6 chain 1 spaces left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. We do, hurrah! And in each of those then we are going to work a cluster, a granny cluster. So we're going to chain 1 and then work 3 double crochet in here. We're going to chain 1 and then 3 in here, and so on. And then when you get to the end, you have your chain 1, and then we're going to slip stitch into the first stitch to join. So I'll meet you there. Now when we get here, we're going to slip stitch into this first stitch to join. And now the difference from the previous round is that what we now need to do is slip stitch to the nearest chain 2 space. So this one here, because this is where we want to begin and end all of our rounds. So slip stitch through. Then you're ready to turn and work our next round. Round 3 for this size is a shoulder increase, is what I've called it in the pattern. So for some sizes you won't be doing a shoulder increase round here, but for some sizes you will. So just double check in the pattern what your size is telling you. If you're not doing a shoulder increase at this point, you will be at some point, and the same principle applies. So we're going to work a point here and a point at the front here where we have made our chain 2 spaces, and then we're going to increase sneakily at the midpoint of the shoulders as well. So let me show you how we do that now. To start round 3 then, we are going to pop a stacked double crochet into this chain 2 space, and then to that we're going to add 2 double crochet to make a granny cluster. Then we chain 2, and then we work another set of 3 double crochet into that same place. So it carries on increasing there to make our point. Then we chain 1 and we skip the next granny cluster, and then we're going to work into this chain space another granny cluster, so 3 double crochet here. Then we chain 1, and we need 3 of these until we're ready to work our shoulder increase. So we have 1, and then we put number 2 in here, we chain 1, and then we put 3 in here. Then we chain 1, and now in this space here we are ready to work our shoulder increase, and we're going to do here 2 double crochet, a chain 1 and 2 double crochet, all in that same space there. Now the important thing to know for this now is that when we're then counting next time, these 2 double crochet count as a granny cluster. So from now on, a granny cluster can be these 3 together or can be 2 together. It's basically any set of stitches that is then separated by a chain space. So then plain sailing to the next point, we're going to chain 1 and we're going to work granny clusters in the next set of chain spaces up until we get to that point. Chain 1, and here we are, we're at the chain 2 space. So we're going to work 3 double crochet in here, then we chain 2, and then we work another 3 double crochet into the same place. And now the great thing about this yoke is that, well, as with all yokes, I assume, it is symmetrical. So what we have done on this side, we now repeat on this side. So we're going to work a regular granny cluster of 3 double crochet in 1, 2 and 3. Then we work our shoulder increase of 2 double crochet, chain 1, 2 double crochet, and then our sets of 3, 3 and 3 here. Then we chain 1 and we slip stitch to join. So you go ahead and work this side and I'll meet you back and we'll talk about what to do if you want to change colour for a round. Now here we are at the end of that round, and where I have chained 1, I'm skipping this last granny cluster and then I'm going to slip stitch into the first stitch to join. Now, as we did before, we slip stitched into that chain 2 space and then turned, because that's what we need to do to start the next round. But I'm going to show you here, if you would like to change colours, as I hope you do, because they look amazing in lots of different colours, we are actually going to break our yarn here, unless it's your main colour, and then you can cleverly hide it round the back somehow. And then once you've broken your yarn here, we pull it through and then we are going to turn, because then we can join our next colour to this chain 2 space here, just where we're then ready to begin round 4 for this size. So now, having turned and with our new colour, we are going to join our yarn here to this chain 2 space, and then we are going to chain 1 just to get ourselves going, and then we're ready to create our point here. So this is at the front and the back of each round. We're going to stack a double crochet, and then we're going to work another 2 double crochet here, a chain 2, and then 3 double crochet to give ourselves 2 granny clusters in that one space there. And then this round for this size is a really straightforward one, because we have no shoulder increases. So I've just chained 1 already there, and then we're going to skip this one here, and then we're going to work a granny cluster in each of the chain 1 spaces all the way along until we get to this chain 2 space. Now, the only thing to watch out for here is that where we've done our shoulder increase, it's very easy, I nearly missed it then, very easy to miss this chain 1 space here. So we have our 2 double crochet of that granny cluster, chain 1, and then another 2 double crochet. So make sure that you pop a cluster into the middle of that. Here we are at our chain 2 space, and just as we did at the start here, we're going to work 2 granny clusters and a chain 2 space in the middle. And then you may have guessed it, but we carry on doing exactly the same around the other side as we did on this first side. And then we chain 1 and we slip stitch into our first to join. Now the next round, round 5 of this side, is another another repeat of what we have just done here. So no shoulder increases for round 5. Then round 6 is a shoulder increase. 7 and 8 are straightforward, and then round 9, which is the last round of this size of yoke, is another shoulder increase. You now know everything that you need to know in order to complete the yoke for the size that you're making. So you either will be working a shoulder increase round or a regular increase round, and they're in different places for different sizes, so just watch out. But for the size that I'm making, rounds 4 and 5 are regular, 6 is a shoulder increase, 7 and 8 are regular, and then 9 is a shoulder increase. So I'm going to carry on and do those. You do the size that you follow along for the size that you're making to the end of the yoke, and at the point where it says move to split for sleeves section. So once you get to that point in the pattern, meet me back here and we will split for the sleeves. Once you have completed your yoke to the rounds it tells you to in the pattern, it will look something like this when it's folded over. When it's flat, it will look something bizarre like this. And as you see, we have our back running here, because this is where we joined our first round, and this will be the front. But you can have it either way. It's the same, it's symmetrical, and you can also have the stitches whichever side you like. Because we turn, it doesn't matter. You can have this is your right side, this is your right side, it really doesn't matter. You decide which way you'd rather fold it over. But what we're going to do now is pop 2 of our stitch markers in, to join some of these chain spaces together in order to create the body section. The written pattern on the blog and in the PDF tells you everything you need to know about the numbers of chains to skip, but if you're a diagram kind of person, the premium PDF does also include stitch charts for each of the different yokes to show you where to put your markers. So for this 0 to 6 month size, we need to begin by counting from one of these chain 2 spaces. It doesn't matter because the sides are going to be the same. So pick one of your chain 2 spaces, and then from that we need to skip 5 chain 1 spaces working from here. So we have a chain 2 space here, and we're going to skip 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And then it tells us to put a stitch marker in the next chain 1 space here. So let's pop that in there, but let's not close it because we're going to join it to another chain space, and it's going to ask us now to skip another 5. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. Be careful of that one there because it's a shoulder increase and hiding. 4 and 5, and then we need to join this same stitch marker to this chain space here. So we fold this over, pop the stitch marker into that one as well, and secure it closed. Now if you don't have stitch markers, don't worry, you can use a piece of a tail of your yarn if you want to weave in one of those, and you can do that. Just a spare piece of thread will work really nicely, or a safety pin. Then it asks us to find the other chain 2 space, and we do the same thing again on the other side. So we count 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and then in the next chain space we pop our next stitch marker. Then we skip 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and then we join that same stitch marker to here. And then once you've secured that, you'll be able to see that when you fold it over, we have what are going to be little armholes here. So then this working downwards from here is where our body's going to be, and this is where we will pop our sleeves. So now we are set up ready to work round 1 of the body. Now to begin our round 1 of our body, we need to figure out where we are. I'm going to carry on, it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to carry on joining from what is my back here. And what we need to do is we make sure that we carry on with our turns in the right direction. So I've got the back of the stitches here facing me, so this is the correct way that I need to start for this next round. For round 1 of the body then, we are going to join our yarn into this chain 2 space here. We are going to work a stacked double crochet and then 2 double crochet. This may feel familiar. It's exactly what you've done on every round so far. Then you're going to chain 2 and then work another 3 double crochet in there. So you're going to match exactly what you've done on the rounds below. Now at the moment, we are carrying on extending the length of this sweater. Different versions, they all extend for at least this round. Different versions stop at different points, and this is also a point that you can extend and adjust for your size. I had some of my testers make them longer, I had some of them stop short of here. It's completely up to you because the more rounds you do with these points is obviously going to extend the length of your entire sweater. Once we've done that, we are going to chain 1, and then we're going to skip this granny cluster here and then work a granny cluster into the next chain 1 space. Then we chain 1, we skip the next granny cluster, and then we work into the next chain 1 space. We repeat this along until we get to the chain 1 space before the stitch marker. So now we've arrived at that last chain 1 space. We haven't chained 1, the pattern doesn't chain 1 here. And what we're going to do is double crochet 2 together over the chain 1 spaces that are joined by this stitch marker. So we're going to begin our first double crochet in this chain 1 space here, but we're not going to complete that stitch. We're going to start another double crochet in this chain 1 space here, so the other chain 1 space joined with the stitch marker, and then we complete all 3 by yarning over and pulling through. Now we don't chain one here, we just skip the next granny cluster that we have, and then we carry on with the repeats of the pattern down to our chain one space. So we work a granny cluster in this chain one, we chain one, skip the next, and then granny cluster all the way through to our chain two space. And now we chain one and we work into this chain two space exactly the same as we have with other rounds. So we're going to work 3 double crochet, a chain two and 3 double crochet. And now working up this side is exactly the same as the first. We are going to work all the way up to here with our granny clusters, and we're then not going to chain one. And now we're at our stitch marker again, and we're ready to work our next double crochet 2 together. So we begin one here in this first chain one, and then we begin our second one in this second chain one that it's joined to. And I've somehow managed to get my stitch marker tangled up in the middle of that stitch. That's quite impressive. We don't need it now anyway, so let's pop that out. And then we carry on working down. We're going to skip this granny cluster without a chain one here. And then work a new granny cluster in the chain one space here. And then carry on as we do normally through to the first stitch of the round. Then we chain one and we slip stitch in that first to join. Now there are a couple of sizes that finish this section here, so you'll have to break your yarn and then go to the next section. But for this size and all the other sizes, we are going to slip stitch through to that chain two space, and then we are going to turn and we'll be ready to work round two. Now round two here sees us carrying on increasing here at this point, so we're going to work our V here, but then we're going to decrease here under the arm. So we begin as always with working our 2 granny clusters and our chain 2 in this chain 2 space that we're already in. And then we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to work just as we have done before, working our granny clusters in the chain 1 spaces, and we're going to work up until the chain 1 space before the last one here. Now we've arrived at our last chain 1 space before the double crochet 2 together that we have, and what we're going to do is we're going to work a granny cluster in this one, but then we're not going to chain 1. So we finish there on a granny cluster, and then simply pop a double crochet into the top of the double crochet 2 together. Now this can be a bit tricky to find first time around, so we'll look at it together. We have 1, 2, 3 stitches of this granny cluster, and then 1, 2 and 3 stitches of this granny cluster, and here's our double crochet 2 together right in the middle. It might feel like it's a bit off to the side, and so very often people will want to pop it in this one, but it's actually in this stitch here. So we're going to pop a double crochet into that stitch, and then we're going to skip the next granny cluster and then carry on in the way that we have been doing, working granny clusters in the chain 1 space, making sure here on that first one that you don't do a chain 1. There are no chain 1s in this section here between the granny cluster and the double crochet, and we carry on doing this decrease all the way down the side of the sweater. So it's just really important to make sure that you don't do a chain 1 here, but we do a chain 1 when we're going in between them here. So we carry on till we get to the chain 2 space here at the bottom, and then we do our regular V in that. I've never called it a V before, I shouldn't have called it a V. We do our regular set of increases at the bottom. So here we are at this chain 2 space, and we're going to work exactly the same as we did here at the beginning. And then this side of the sweater is going to, it looks very odd like this, doesn't it? This side of the sweater is going to repeat exactly what we've done here. So have your decrease here in the middle section, and then just regular granny clusters separated by a chain 1 space. So carry on working round 2, and then meet me back and we will flatten the bottom and close the sides together. So here I am at the end of that round 2, and I need to slip stitch, as long as you're using the same colour of course for the next round, into your chain 2 space to get ready. And now we are going to turn as we always do. And the difference now is we are going to want to flatten, this is going to be the bottom of the sweater. So if I turn it around, here's the neckline, here are the sleeves, and this part here we are now going to make straight. We're not going to carry on going down and making it longer, we are now going to go straight. If you, as I said before, if you want to make yours longer, then keep repeating this last round until it's the length that you would like it, bearing in mind that we do add, if you would like to, a small rib at the bottom. So just make sure that it doesn't get too long, but if you have the person around that you want to try it on and get it the right length for them, then that's really, really helpful. So once we have completed this round, I am now ready to start flattening out this side. Now we do this one side by one side because we're going to turn and work in rows now rather than rounds. One of my top tips for this section is, if you are using lots of colours, it's fine for these colours because I know I have plenty of the yarn for whatever sequence I want to do here. But if you are using perhaps from your stash and you've got a small amount of lots of colours, we need to know that if you want this side of your sweater to match this side of your sweater, you have enough yarn. So I'm going to work them in sequence. So I'll do the whole of this side and then the whole of this side. But when I've done my really stripy bright ones, I have done one row of this side and then one row of this side in the same colour, and then carried on that way just to make sure that I have enough yarn. You can probably tell I learned the hard way that I didn't have enough of some of my yarn on a previous version. So if you have lots and lots of colours going on and you are not sure whether you've got quite enough yarn, work the coloured rows in sequence. But for this one, I know that I have enough yarn, so I'm going to work the whole of this side first as it is written in the pattern. So to begin our row, we are going to work a stacked double crochet in this chain 2 space, and that's all we're going to do in that chain 2 space. We're then going to skip this granny cluster, and then we are going to work 3 double crochet, another granny cluster in the next chain 1 space. And we're going to carry on doing this until we get to the chain 1 space before the last. So this one here is going to have a granny cluster in it and a chain 1. So let's go ahead and do that now. So there we are with our chain 1. We're going to skip this granny cluster and then work a granny cluster in here now. Then we don't chain 1 at this point. We're just going to skip this granny cluster and then work a double crochet into the double crochet from the round before. And then because we're decreasing in the center here, we don't do a chain 1. We're just going to simply skip these 3 double crochet and then pop a granny cluster into here. So 3 double crochet into this chain 1 space. And then we're plain sailing up until, she says, we get to the last chain 1. So now we have 1 chain 1 space left, and we are going to do a granny cluster in there. We're going to skip the next granny cluster, and then we're going to work a double crochet in that chain 2 space. And this will start to flatten the bottom of the sweater for us. Now we're ready already to turn and work row 2. Now to begin that, we are going to work a stacked double crochet into that double crochet that we already have here. Then we are going to skip this granny cluster and work a granny cluster into the first chain 1 space. And then we do as we did before. We're going to chain 1, skip the granny cluster, and then work into the next one. And then we chain 1. Now we carry on repeating this until, she says we haven't got far to go, until we have 1 space left. We chain 1, and then we can work a granny cluster in this last chain 1 space that we have before the double crochet. And then no chain 1 because we're decreasing here. We're going to double crochet into the double crochet of the previous row. And then again, no chain 1 because we're decreasing, and we're going to work a granny cluster into that chain 1 space there. We chain 1, we skip the granny cluster, and then we work our next granny cluster in the chain 1 space. And then here we are in the last chain 1 space. We've done our granny cluster. We don't chain 1 here. We skip the next granny cluster, which is the last one of the previous row, and then we work a double crochet into that last stitch. And that is row 2 complete, and you might be able to see, it's quite hard already on this small size to see it flattening out, but this will flatten out here at the bottom and it will decrease here. So we carry on repeating row 2, just the one that we've just done now, until you've got until we have 4 granny clusters and 3 double crochet stitches. Now I've got to the point where I have 1, 2, 3, 4 granny clusters and 1, 2 and 3 double crochet stitches, and all of the sizes will get to this point. You'll just obviously need to work a different number of rows to get to that point. The final 2 rows that we need to now work are very similar, so work a stacked double crochet in that first stitch, and then we're going to skip the granny cluster and then work a granny cluster here in this next chain 1 space. And then we're already at the decrease, so we don't work a chain 1, we just go skip those and go straight into that double crochet with a double crochet, and then we skip the granny cluster and then work a granny cluster into that chain 1 space, and then we're already at the end, so we are going to skip those and then work a double crochet in the last stitch. And we turn to start working the last row. And the last row is a stacked double crochet in the first stitch. We skip the granny cluster and work a double crochet here in the center in that double crochet. And then we skip the granny cluster and we work a double crochet in the last stitch. So the last row is just 3 double crochets. And then you're ready to break your yarn here. And so I'm obviously doing my sides in a solid colour, so I'm now going to rejoin my yarn and repeat on this side. But if you've obviously been doing row by row as I suggested with the coloured version, then you're absolutely ready now to put the bottom band on. So if you have done that and you're ready to put the bottom band on, don't break your yarn here and work the bottom band with me. But if you have yours that is like mine, then you're now ready here. You just need to make sure that you join to the correct place. So we see our stitches, we need to carry on working in turned rows and rounds still. So we have the backs of our stitches facing here, so we're going to join to the chain 2 space here so that we can work around in rows there and flip back again. So just watch out to make sure that your stitches are facing the correct way. Once we've closed both sides of the sweater, it should look something like this. Hurrah! It has a flat bottom, and I am still joined here at my second close of the side, because now I'm going to, as long as you want to use the same colour of course, carry on and do my bottom band here. To work the bottom band, I've swiveled around so we're in the right place, and we're going to work a join as you go band, which means we're going back and forth in rows, and we're going to slip stitch into the bottom of the sweater to join as we go around. Now, beginning this, well, you can make it as long as you would like to, but I have suggested that we chain 7. And then working in the second chain from the hook and then each along, we're going to work a single crochet. Now I like to work in the back bumps, so we swivel and we pop our single crochet in there like that. So working each of them along, and so that will give us 6 single crochet. And so then we are going to slip stitch into the side of the next stitch of the body, and then we will turn. Then working back into these 6 stitches that we now have, we're going to work in the back loops of them, so into this part of the stitch here. We're going to work a yarn over slip stitch. So as it says on the tin, we're going to yarn over, and then we're going to go into the back loop of this first stitch here, yarn over and pull through, and then pull through everything. Work those in each of the stitches along, so yarn over and pop through, yarn over and pull through everything. So we'll need 6 stitches. Our count stays the same all the way around. And then at the end, we're ready to turn. I'm trying not to have it in the way, but I'm going to flip it so it's easier to see. And then we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to work a single crochet in the back loop of each of these stitches across. So 6 stitches again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. And now we're going to slip stitch into 2 of the stitches from the body, the side of the body, and these are really easy then to find because we have the stitches, they're stacked stitches or double crochets, so each of them will get 2 slip stitches in them. And then we turn and we work our yarn over slip stitch row. So our 2 slip stitches, we don't worry about those, we just have our 6 stitches that we have had from the start of this band. Now this band, by slip stitching into 2 each time, we create a fairly snug band. If you would like yours to be a little bit looser, then you can always slip stitch into less as you go around or more as you go around. And then all we need to do is carry on repeating those last 2 rows and slip stitching into the 2 as you get to the body. Now, if you would like your band slightly looser, because this is a fairly snug band, it has got good stretch in it, but it is fairly snug when it's done, then you could always alternate and just then slip stitch into 1, and that would make it a little bit looser for you. But carry on working this all the way around the bottom of the body, and then meet back here, and then we will join this together. Once you have worked all the way around the bottom band, we'll have met back here with our row 1, and we need to join our last row to our first row with a slip stitch seam. That's hard to say. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold them together, and then we are going to slip stitch using the loops of this side and then of this side. So join them together, matching stitch for stitch. You should still have your 6 stitches, so make sure they line up. There we are. And then you can break your yarn, and that is the bottom band complete. Now it does have a slight slant to it, that's perfectly normal, and that will, it's already sorting itself out actually, but it will sort itself out when you block it. So make sure that at the end you block everything, and that will straighten out all of these kinks and bumps. We are now ready to pop our sleeves on, and the way that we do this is that there are a couple of things we need to get right first. We need to make sure that we have the backs of the stitches facing up at us for this last round here. So if you're ever unsure, just look for these bumps that come here. That's the back of the stitch there. And then if you're looking at the front of the stitch, which is the round before, you can't go in at this direction, you go in at this direction. Now I assume it's left and right-handed people will be slightly different because you might have turned the angle of your hook. But it should be very obvious where the back and the front of your stitches are. So just make sure, because your yoke may have finished on a different number round, so you may well be facing a different way. So you might need to start your sleeves facing this direction. Just check the way that you're facing. And what we need to do is we need to find the back of the sweater. This is going to be the back of my sweater. And then we need to find the chain 1 space that doesn't have anything in it. So this one is joined, this chain 1 space, which we will use. But to start our sleeve, we're going to join to this chain 1 space here. And to begin, we are going to work a granny cluster in here with a stacked double crochet as the first stitch. So we have 1, 2 and 3 stitches, then we chain 1, we skip the next cluster of 3, and then we work a granny cluster in the next chain 1 space, and then we chain 1. And so then we carry on repeating that until we get to the last empty chain 1 space of the armhole. So watch out for sneaky shoulder increases. Let's pop one in there. And different sizes may or may not have those on this round. So we've chained 1, and that is the last chain 1 space of the armhole, the last empty one anyway. And if we swivel round now, we have got our 2 that were joined together by this double crochet 2 together, if you remember doing that. And what we're now going to do is work a double crochet. We've chained 1. We're now going to work a double crochet in this chain 1 here that has got part of the stitch in it there. Then we're going to work a double crochet in this double crochet 2 together. And now because we're working on the upside down part of the stitch, it's up to you where you put this stitch. I tend to go in this part here. And then we also put a double crochet into this chain 1 space as well. So both the chain 1 spaces that are joined together for the armhole and the double crochet 2 together itself get a double crochet. And those 3 double crochet become a new granny cluster. So I know they're spread apart, but that is now a granny cluster. And then we chain 1, we skip this granny cluster here, and then we're going to slip stitch in this first to join. Now that we've completed round 1, that's the hardest one of the sleeve, we are going to turn so that we're going to be working facing the other way, and we'll slip stitch into that first chain 1 space. And this round is much easier because we're just going to be doing a nice granny's cluster round all the way around. So we do 1 and then stack 1 on top of it, 2 and then 3, then we chain 1, we skip our granny cluster, and you're going to see that that one is this one that we did over the underarm here. So they're 1, 2 and 3, and then work into the next chain 1 space. And believe it or not, it's easier on the bigger sizes. These little sizes have got so few that it's quite fiddly to show you here. We chain one and we carry on working all the way around. Here we are back at the beginning of that round, and we're going to slip stitch in the first stitch to join. And then we're ready to do just as we did before, turn and get ourselves into this chain one space here. And then for this size, rounds 3 and 4 is just a repeat of round 2. Different sizes have different amounts of repeats at this point before we get to our first decrease round. So do check in the pattern for the size that you're making, but I'm going to carry on and do rounds 3 and 4 and then meet you back here to do our first decrease of the sleeve. So I've just completed round 4 for the size that I'm making, and I'm going to do my first decrease round here on round 5, but it may well be a different number if you're making a different size. But this is how any of the decrease rounds work. We are going to, I've slip stitched, I've turned, no, go back Hannah, I've turned and then I've slip stitched into the chain one space. And in this chain one space and the next chain one space, I'm going to do what we're calling a clustered decrease. So to work a cluster decrease, we are going to begin with a stacked double crochet here in this space. And then we're going to work a double crochet 2 together in this chain one space and in this chain one space. So similar to how we did under the arms. I've started a double crochet here, and now I'm going to start another one here in this chain one space. And then I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3 to close it. And then I'm going to work another double crochet in that chain one space, so that second chain one space. So now we have got these 2 chain one spaces. We've just worked one granny cluster over the 2 of them, whereas normally we would work one cluster here and one cluster here. So this is how we're decreasing for the sleeve rounds. And then the rest of this round we're going to chain 1, skip the granny cluster, and then work as we normally would with 3 double crochet in each chain 1 space, followed by chain 1 and then skip the next cluster. So that's all we now need to do for the rest of this round, and then you slip stitch in your first to join. And so then for the rest of the sleeve, the sequence is written out in the pattern of when you need to do a decrease round and when you need to do a straight round. So keep your stitch count the same and just work into all the chain 1 spaces as a granny cluster. So if you want to go ahead and follow the sequence for your size for the sleeve, and then meet me back here and I will show you how to do the sleeve cuff. Now, if you want to change your sleeve at all, you can easily adjust it by either doing more decreases or less decreases. It really doesn't matter. Now, I have designed them to be fairly snug sleeves. This is because, I'm just shuffling that so I can get hold of this one that I've done here. This is because my children like snug cuffs. It's a style preference, so I have tapered them in quite significantly for my children and their preferences. They do still have a good amount of stretch in them, but if you want them to be a bit fuller and a bit looser, then just don't work as many decreases down the sleeve, and it will just stay fuller all the way, and then you will have a slightly wider cuff. So entirely up to you. And the thing is, with these small versions, they don't take very long to work the sleeves anyway, so you could just have a go and then see what you think, see if you are happy with the size and the fit, and then if not, just have another go on the other side. But make a note of what you do if you change your decreases, because if you're anything like me, you won't remember what you've done when you come to copy it on the other side. So however you would like to do your sleeve, go ahead and work them and then meet me back here and we will do the rib, which is the same process regardless of how many cluster stitches you end up on your last round. And also on that note, you can work as many rounds as you like. I have done my sleeve length to the Craft Yarn Council standard length in the pattern, but children, adults, we all come in different shapes and sizes. So if you need yours longer or shorter, then just do as many or as few rounds as you need to fit the person you're making. I've just finished the first sleeve for this size, and as you can see, all sorts of wonky, but this will sort itself up beautifully when you block it. And now we are ready to put the cuff on for the sleeve. Now we're facing in the right direction. We need the front side, the right side of our work facing us. And we're going to do basically exactly the same as we did at the bottom band, but join to all of the stitches around as the join as you go method. And this time around for the sleeve cuffs and for the neckband, I've suggested that we do 4 stitches. So we're going to begin by chaining 5. And then as we did for the bottom band, working back into those, the second chain from the hook, we're going to do a single crochet in each of them. And then for this first row, we're just going to slip stitch into the next stitch, just one of them. And then we turn, not that there's much to turn at the moment. And then we're going to yarn over slip stitch in the back loop only of these 4 stitches that we have. So 1, 2, 3, and oops, nearly 4, and then the same as the bottom band. I'm only doing it like that because I don't want to hit the camera. We chain 1 and then we single crochet into the back loop only of each. So that will be 4 again. And now from now on, we are going to slip stitch in 2, but as long as you are happy with how tight that makes the cuff then. As I say, it will stretch when it blocks, and it will just have a natural stretching given it anyway, depending on what type of yarn you use. Obviously this yarn as an acrylic doesn't have much stretch in it, and neither would a cotton, for example. But if you're using wool, for example, then that will have a lot more natural stretch in it anyway. So carry on working this cuff, joining as you go, and then in the same way that we joined the bottom band together when we got back to here, that's what we will do here. We will slip stitch seam these together. Then what we'll need to do is pop the sleeve in exactly the same way onto the other side, and then you can meet me back here and we will do the neckband to finish off. Okay, so once you have your sleeves on, completely ignoring the fact that I haven't done my second sleeve because I want to show you how to do the neckband. The neckband is the last thing that we need to add before weaving in all of our ends and blocking to finish. As we can see on this version, it is the same as the ribbing that we have used at the bottom and on the sleeve cuffs, and it makes this lovely V-neck here. Now I've done it as a join as you go method, and it's really nice and stretchy because it's a V-neck. It's got lots of space to pop over children's heads here. And in order to begin, what we're going to do is we're going to have the right side of our sweater facing us, so make sure that your rib is all facing you in the correct way here. And then you're going to find the center chain 1 space, and then you're going to count 3 stitches to the right, in my case because I'm right-handed, 3 stitches to the right of that chain 1 space, and this is where we are going to join. So we join our yarn into that stitch and we chain 1. Then we're going to work a single crochet into those 3 stitches, and then we're going to pop a single crochet into the chain 1 space in the center of the sweater. Then we need to slip stitch into the next stitch of this round, so it's all in this first round that we need to slip stitch and work into, and then we're already ready to turn. So I wouldn't normally flip all the way over, but I will so that you can see more easily. And then what we're going to do is, as we've done with our ribbing before, we're going to yarn over slip stitch in the back loop only of each of the stitches. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we're ready to turn again. And we're going to chain 1 and then single crochet in the back loop only of all the stitches, so 4 stitches. And then we're going to slip stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. and then we turn and we do our yarn over slip stitch. So there's 1, 2, 3, oops, and 4. And we just can keep repeating those 2 rounds until we get to the center chain 1 space here. So work all the way around, joining this neckband until we get to here, and then come back to me and I'll show you how we turn and start working in the opposite direction. So now we're here at the chain 1 space on the other side, and what we're going to do is join these 4 stitches here to the chain 1 space and then the next 3 stitches, so it gathers on this side. So we need to work into this first stitch there and then into the chain 1 space, and just pop a slip stitch there, and then the second one matches up with the next stitch on the row. Third one goes into the next stitch, and the fourth one, whoops, which is hiding from me, into the next one. So that has now joined, and we now need to rotate so that we can work back along these stitches to then start the next side of the neckband. So what we're going to do, we're going to flip so that we have the wrong side facing, and we're going to work a yarn over slip stitch in the ends of 4 of these rows. Now they are tricky to find because you've just done some slip stitches there, so just try your best to figure out where they need to sit. So that's 1, and then 2 will be this bump here, 3, and then 4 in that bump there. And then we turn and we are ready to then carry on along to chain 1 and then to single crochet in the back loop of these 4. So basically we've now turned the corner, and now we're going to go all the way along and slip stitch again into all of the stitches along here. Now I've been doing, stay consistent with wherever you pop your hook. I'm going to pop into there and into there, so that's 2 we've joined to, and then we yarn over slip stitch in the back loop of each of these 4. So that again is the repeat for the rib. So carry on working that until you get back to the beginning of the neckband again, and we will join and finish. Now here I am, I've got all the way back round to the start, and I've slip stitched into that chain 1 space, and now all we need to do is fold these over, she says, all we need to do. Fold those over, and then we're going to slip stitch these 4 stitches here to the ends of the first 4 rows of the neckband that we did, and that will close it for us. So we go 1, and then just check where you are before you pop it in, 2, 3, and then 4. Now you're ready to break your yarn, and if you're like me and you got excited and did the neckband first, you've now got to do your second sleeve, but if not, then you'll be completely done. So you'll just be able to weave in your ends, block lightly to measurements, and that will iron out all of any of these kinks and bumps, because where we do the decreases and the changes in the granny stitch, we do get odd shapes until you block it. So don't worry if it is an odd shape to start with, just get it blocked nice and neatly and it will look absolutely fantastic. I really hope you've enjoyed making this cute sweater with me. As I say, there are other versions, so the cardigan version and a hoodie version available. They have quite a different construction, so make sure that if you're making either of those, you go and find the video tutorial and the written pattern for those. If you do make one, please come and find me and do show me, because I would absolutely love to see them, and I will see you again soon.